Yo, yo, what's happening, people? Hope you're doing good and hope the week is going good so far. So, on today's show, the one and only Rebuke is sitting down with me and having a conversation. Great podcast. Obviously, he's killing it right now, and I've known him for a pretty long time. You'll hear more about that in the podcast. So, without further ado, the one and only Rebuke. Rebuke, how's it going, mate?
How you doing, man? I
Good.
like the studio in the background there.
Yeah, man. It's all catching dust. To be fair, let's be honest.
So, look at all like the stuff in the background there. It's plugged in.
How's life, man? I haven't spoke to you for ages, obviously,
It's
apart from the odd WhatsApp chat. But what's going on?
going alright, man. It's very quiet compared to this time last year. It's funny because on Facebook you've got like your memories.
Yeah,
Like it shows up pictures from the year before, and like every day I'm getting like different pictures from this country and that country and doing this gig and that gig, and then this year it's just like every day sitting in the studio or sitting at home and
Ne-
it's
next year's memories are going to be dull as fuck, aren't they? They're just going to be
I know,
like
man.
us, like
But hopefully we'll be making them next year.
yeah. Hopefully, man. Hopefully. I think last time I saw you actually was in Miami a long time
that
ago.
that was like last year, wasn't it? March last year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
because
did you? That was the It's Space, wasn't it? Was it Space then?
yeah, yeah, it was space. Because I think I actually almost lived in space that week. I just kept up for some reason. I kept going back there every night, man. It was just nuts. And because I got booked to play there twice. One of them was for Paradise, and the second one was for Dirtybird. And the so I went in there the first time, and I didn't. Space and there's like 12-hour or 24-hour parties.
Yeah.
So I got booked to play from like 12 at night till 2 in the morning for Paradise, and then went back to the hotel like 4 or 5, and then got up again the next morning and went back into there again for like another 5 or 6 hours, and then the night after that I came back to the Dirtybird gig, and it was just the whole week's pretty blurry, man, to be honest. But it was good though. It was really cool. It was mad. I've never seen that sort of like side of like dance music before, where like the parties just go on all night and all day.
Yeah.
And like the crowd refreshes as like the night goes on, which is pretty cool.
It's a wild venue. The guys that
Yeah.
run that, guys and girls that run that, it's like literally probably it's one of my favorite places to play in America, without a shadow of a doubt. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it because they just party all the time, but that week especially is mental for them. But
Yeah.
yeah, Miami got
That's
cancelled this year.
It's just a vibe, especially.
Just got to make up for it next year, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, yeah. It's weird because we I think it just got cancelled like literally like a week before, didn't it?
Yeah.
Because it was just sort of middle of March, right? So
Yeah.
it was just whenever the coronavirus like was going worldwide, and we just got unlucky, I guess. But it's for the safety, so
Ah well, life goes on, I guess.
yeah, man.
We're lucky that we're still going.
Mm-hmm.
How's making music?
Pretty good, man. I mean, it's I've been making lots of stuff, and I've been speaking to some producers and artists, and they've stopped making dance music and just started to make like really like ambient and stuff. But I feel like for me anyway, like even before things took off for me, I was always making club tracks anyway, and that was before I got booked for gigs.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's sort of, it feels like this, like around now is almost like what it was like before things took off for me. I'm back making tunes and hoping that, hopefully it connects. So, I'm still doing the same thing. I'm still cranking out records, but I mean, it's just one of them ones where you get so like, especially when, we start touring and we
Yeah.
play the crowds a lot, and you sort of fall into sort of like, you expect to test out the records that you work on for a while. And
Yeah.
that's such a luxury that I like now realize was a luxury, because back then you're like, oh, it's just going to play this track out, but now it's not. You can't do that as easily or at all. So it's a bit hard now trying to like adjust to going back to the old days whenever I wasn't getting booked for doing any gigs, and I'm trying to like think, all right, is this going to connect with somebody,
Yeah.
in a year's time, in a club in Brazil or something? And it's just a little bit different, but it's a challenge, man. And you just take it as it comes, doesn't it? What about you?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, for me, I've been writing a lot. At beginning of lockdown, I wrote a load of like club stuff, and then July I didn't write anything. Just was a shit month, which I've never had in the last like since I started writing music. I've never taken like a whole month off, and it wasn't purposely. Like, let me just turn my headphones down one sec.
No worries.
every time I would just sit in front of the studio, I just like couldn't do anything. It was just like shit. But I'm enjoying it. I think for me, not playing in the clubs has kind of given me a little bit more of a breather on what type of records I'm making. Like I'm not really worrying about trying to make bangers that's just gonna work in my sets. I'm like more so like writing more songs that can kind of like people can listen to whilst they're in the shower or like whilst they're doing the cleaning and shit like that. It's like not just worrying about dance floor stuff. Also like dance floor releases, like club releases just are doing awful at the moment. Spotify just doesn't do anything. No one gives a fuck about it, which is wrong because people do give a fuck about it. But at the end of the day, when there's no clubs happening, people aren't. The only people that are Shazamming stuff is stuff that gets played on Radio 1 on like the specialist shows. So it's kind of like, not why bother, but or almost just like, let's just try something else. Just see what else and see how you can kind of like put two different things together and see what you come up with.
And I think as well, you know, if you do put out a club record now and it doesn't connect, I mean, you know, I've found that in the past few months as well. I put out some club stuff and it just didn't do anywhere near as much as what I had the past year or two. And I was kind of prepared for that because I knew we're in a whole different setup.
Yeah.
But what I hope anyway might happen is that the tracks get a resurgence whenever we do end up doing gigs again, because I know I'm going to start playing tracks that I love from other DJs that I wasn't able to play out just out of the sheer notion of wanting to hear what it sounds like live. And then you know yourself, all it takes is a couple of videos, you know, viral videos, and the track gets like a whole second spark. And
totally.
I think hopefully that happens, but I definitely agree about, you know, putting out stuff that's a little bit different and it gives you a bit more time to experiment, because I think whenever we're on the road all the time, we're like being, you know, I wouldn't say forced to make club bangers at all. We can do whatever we want, but whenever we're sort of like got this momentum of making club records all the time, it's very hard to sort of be like, all right, I'm actually putting out a ambient album now.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, oh, what are you talking about? You know?
I think what it is as well is it's almost, for me, it's almost like that ego side of things where you kind of want all the other DJs to be playing your records. So you physically can't write like a chill record, not necessarily just ambient, but like a more vocal based record that's like probably not directed for the DJs. It's kind of hard to like, because we want everyone to play our records. And I guess that's the way we promote our records, is we not expect, but we hope that other DJs are going to play our record. Let's talk about like Along Came Polly for example. Is like Jamie was playing that for months and months and months, and that kind of created a hype on that record where everybody wanted it due to the videos and things like that. And I remember, I think you sent that to me just before you or just as you started the Rebuke project, or it was like, it was maybe like 6 months into it. I can't fully remember. And then Jamie signed it and didn't release it for ages. But the hype of that record made it into the record that it became, and kind of helped kind of get to you where your career is, if that makes sense.
Totally, man. And I think it was all, you know, just to put the record straight, it was all unplanned. There was no like mad PR method. There was no like manager screaming in here saying, "Oh, hey, you know, we need to hold it back another 5 months so that people." There was none of that. It was just it just happened so fast. And you know, whenever the track, by the time Jimmy even played it, which was like August 2018, I had written the track. You're correct. I wrote the track maybe at the start of that year. And you know, I played it out a bunch of times, and I had my own like residency back home here in Letterkenny called Outhouse, and I was playing it there, and it would get a pretty good reaction. I think it was sort of a bit divided because the track is a bit weird, you know, and it took kind of, you know, I guess, you know, it took me playing it out quite a bit for people to get it. But the track sat for like 6 or 7 months and didn't do anything. I sent it to a couple of people, but I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was like, you know, going to be a track that was going to change my life, you know, and, you know, kind of the typical story with everybody, you know, and then my old agent actually was, had a contact with Jimmy, and he was like, hey, why don't you put a bunch of tracks together and send send them to him, or I'll get them to him. And so I put 10 tracks together, and basically along came Polly. Was way at the bottom of the list. It was like maybe ninth track or 10th track. That's how much hope I had for it. And and then I got a text like a week later from one of my mates saying, hey, is this your track? Jimmy's playing on some like track ID blog. Somebody was trying to get the name of the track, and I was like, oh, fuck, that's Jimmy playing my track. And then so I was super excited, and I texted him afterwards, or I emailed him, and I was like, oh, hey, glad you played the track at this festival. Would you be interested in signing it? And at the time, he was like, yeah, let's put it out on Hot Tracks, which is the sub-label of Hot Creations. And another couple of weeks went by. He kept playing it. The momentum just kept building and building and building, and then eventually it got like a fully fledged Hot Creations EP.
Yeah.
And for anybody that's not in the industry, I mean, you and I know well, but these bigger labels, they have a backlog of releases. So whenever you sign something to them, then you have to wait 5 months for it to come out, because they're already 3 or 4 releases ahead of themselves.
Totally, yeah.
So whenever he signed that in September, the release date was like the end of this. Actually, the release date was going to be for February the year afterwards, but we managed to get it changed to December because of just how mad the track was going.
Yeah.
Or how the hype on it. But over the course of like those 3 months between September and December, I just remember like every day, man, waking up to like a hound of messages. When are you putting out this record? Why are you not putting it out? What the all this like hate mail almost. I was like, man, this is how it works, But in the end, I loved it, because just looking back now, it was like, as you said, it was one of the reasons why people loved it so much when it came out. And it also very, like, for me, any reminiscence of back in the old days, whenever you would give a record to an Ibiza DJ in June, you play it all summer, and then you'd put it out in the wintertime, and it would just explode in UK. And that's exactly what happened, because he was playing it all over, Ibiza, Paradise, and all that stuff. And then, whenever it came out in December, it did what it did. And, I'm happy that the track's still today getting, still in the Beatport Top 100 2 years later, which is pretty mental.
It's crazy, man. Congrats.
That's huge, man. But
congrats on that, because it is a fucking bomb at the end of the day. It does well, and you created not many. It doesn't happen often, but you created a sound that no one else had done before.
Yeah, it was totally by fluke, man. I mean, for any producers on here, like, there was no mastermind behind this. There was just, I think I've said it in a couple of interviews before, but the sound, well, the idea was basically me. I had like this trap hi-hat rhythm on a hi-hat, and then I had a synth, and then I accidentally put the MIDI file of the hi-hat trap rhythm onto the synth, and then that's why you get all the kind of triplet things. And that's how it happened. I was like, oh fuck, this kind of sounds cool.
Yeah.
And then that's exactly where it came from. And there was no, like, I'd be shitting myself here if I was like saying, yeah, I came up with it and it was all this and I had it all in my head. It wasn't. And but happy accidents,
I love that, because it's literally the same story for every producer that has something big. Like, they don't mean to do it. They don't go in the studio to be like, I'm gonna write a record like this today. It literally is like, they click the wrong button on the synth and something happens and it sounds amazing. That's kind of the most perfect thing. However, though, like, a lot of people don't know how long you've been doing it. Like, we've known each other for a very long time. I think I was 17 or 18 and you were 16 when we first met.
Yeah,
I was resident at Orange Corner, and you played at Orange Corner in Ibiza for me. Like, what happened from then? Because before, like, Ruben Keeney is your real name. Like, what happened from your Ruben Keeney days to the Rebuke days? Like, what was the whole kind of process? Because I know you were like, you had a bit of success with Ruben Keeney, and then you kind of went off on your own direction with that. Like, what happened from 16-year-old Ruben Keeney to Rebuke? Like, what was the process?
Yeah, so whenever I started to make music when I was 13 or 14, and when I was 16, I had my first like real release. It was came out in vinyl. It came out in Steve Mack's label Smack. It was called Coming Up, and it was the first sort of record that I put out that I seen the big DJs playing. Like, Clarke played it at the time, Sasha, and it crossed over to like David Guetta, but it was just sort of like very progressive house sort of record. And that was my first kind of taste of, all right, well, maybe, this is actually, I could actually maybe make a career of this. But at that time I was still in school and I couldn't really give it my full attention yet. I was doing exams and stuff, and parents being as parents, they want me to focus on not failing my leaving cert. So there was a bit of a side project, but I kind of knew in my head I always wanted to do that. And from even watching really early videos of like Tiesto when he was playing the trance stuff when I was 12 or 13, I was like, this is what I want to do when I'm older.
Yeah.
And I always had that in my head. So I mean, I started releasing music like that, and then I kind of experimented a lot between the ages of like 16 to even up until a couple of years ago, putting out all sorts of music from techno music to progressive house music to the dreaded EDM, a little bit of that too. And we kind of, well, I kind of just like, I guess what I would say now, the Rebuke project is like a mash between everything.
Yeah.
And all the experiences I've had with like putting out different types of music, and they all kind of came together and made this sort of diffused this sound. The Rebuke project itself was kind of more just due to the fact that under my own name I had put out so much stuff that I think people were probably getting confused of what the identity was, and I think I've lost that quite a bit. So I wanted to have some new kind of exciting project that focused solely on the dance floor. I mean, there's no other message. Whenever I created Rebuke, it was dance floor bangers. That's it. There's no other kind of hidden thing behind it. It's just I want to make music that makes people dance and makes people want to take their tops off and throw it around.
Definitely.
And that's still the ethos today, man. That's what I do, and like it's been working, and obviously it's been a while. It's been a long time. Coming from me, I've been making music for 12, 13 years, but I still think that now is probably the best time to break through, because I've been going through so many different I've gone through so many different hurdles, and I've experienced so much in my career so far.
Yeah.
That I can kind of make the right decisions now and not like take everything that gets thrown at me, because yourself, when you have a big record, all of a sudden everybody wants to be your friend, everybody wants to get you to remix or track or sign to their label, and you really need to like cut through that and be like, all right, is this what I want? And sometimes it's difficult because you have these artists that you've been looking up to since you're 13 asking you, do you want to do like a collaboration or a remix or a sign to their label, and you really need to think of the project and like, where do you want to go? You can't let somebody else define you. So there was a lot of that went on, but I think if I hadn't have gone through the hurdles that I had before, I probably would have made them mistakes and probably wouldn't be where the Rebuke project luckily is at now. But it's still an ongoing thing, and I'm sure you get the same thing as well. So it's just I guess timing as well as everything.
It's really interesting that, isn't it, when like I've had it in a few occasions where you kind of get to the point where you look up to somebody as like, you love their music, you look at them as extremely successful, and then when your success kind of overtakes their success, or it's kind of that weird feeling, but you don't think that it can ever happen. Because you're like, I would always put people on pedestals, if you know what I mean. I'd always look up at so much of people and like respect so much of what they've done. But then it's just life, isn't it? People kind of have their time, and some people's times aren't when other people's times are. And I think this is the amazing thing about this industry. You could have like people that are extremely successful kind of go under the radar for a long time and then release a really fucking good record, and they're back up here. And I think it's just the vibe of just keep trucking on, because eventually it's gonna come. It'll eventually come round if you keep working hard at it. And you're a classic example of that. Like, and what's your thoughts on like the importance of giving like your fan base like a clear cut of what you do, rather than going in between the lines and kind of doing that with like what you were saying with your old stuff, is that it was just too kind of, it was all over the shop, if you know what I mean, and you wouldn't necessarily have one fan base. Or what's your thoughts on the Rebuke stuff? Do you think just doing straight club bangers has actually helped you, and by not verging off left or right has kind of helped you?
I think to not make it too like business minded, you sort of need to think of it like a brand, as if like you walk into McDonald's now, you know you're going to get a double cheeseburger, and
Yeah.
you're going to feel like shit afterwards, but it tastes good at the time.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what you know going into that store. You're not going to get like some keto friendly meal, or you're not going to get like you know what you're going to get. So I think at least starting out as an artist, you need to have like some real clear cut branding, and like have a real sense of direction for fans to get behind.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many artists out there, and there's so many great artists doing great things, but because they're kind of spiraling off and doing so many different things, it's really hard for like somebody to like latch onto. And it's the same with me. I mean, if I'm a music fan as well, and whenever I check out a DJ, I like this record. It'd be great if I could hear some more records in the same lane. Obviously, not copying what they're doing, but
Yeah.
I like this track. I wonder what their next 4 or 5 releases are like as well. And if I seen them go from like a techno track to all of a sudden a complete like melodic house track to a trance banger, then you're kind of like, oh, this is a bit weird, unless they can fuse the sound together in a way where it still sounds consistent.
Yeah.
So I mean that's how I view on it. I mean, as the time goes on, as you build your fan base and like you're 4 or 5 years into your career, then you can start spiraling a little bit different. And I think fans know about you enough where you can put out this ambient album or do whatever, and they'll still like listen to it for face value because you've got such a back catalog, and your message is out there at that stage already. And that's for me how I see it work, and that's kind of what I try to do now.
Yeah, definitely. It's weird. I was in a session the other day. We were talking about like DJs, producers, and like bands that have been able to release like commercial music, but when they get to the club or they get to do their live shows and they just play banging techno, and like Chemical Brothers, Daft Punk, almost Faithless to a certain extent as well. And to get to that point is, for me, would be like heaven, where you can like write amazing records that the general public, that like not the dance and house community, it goes out, it goes bigger, the records go bigger than that. But then you go to a club and you can just play like whatever the fuck you want, and you kind of get that ability. But it's so hard to get to that point. It's
yeah, I think it's hard, but also I think for like the examples you gave, like the Chemical Brothers and stuff, they've been going since like the 90s, right?
90s, yeah.
So they've already like such a massive fan base, and people knows Chemical Brothers is like squelchy acid music, and it's just bonkers stuff, and they've got this massive visuals.
Yeah,
people know the Chemical Brothers from that, so they get away with probably being able to put out something a little bit more commercial.
Yeah,
as long as it stays in the same lane, I think. But I think for guys that they've never put out a record before, and then they try and put out like a UK top 40 smash record.
Yeah.
If they put out that UK top 40 smash record, that's what they're defined as.
Totally.
At that time. And then I think they have to like work a little bit backwards in to try and, do what they really want to do. And that's kind of, to be honest, man, I had that problem a little bit, with Along Came Polly. It wasn't a massive thing, but I've always played the more techno side of things.
Yeah.
And Along Came Polly obviously came out on a tech Hot Creations, which is known for house music and tech house music, and it got donned by a lot of the the house guys. So whenever I started to play gigs, I was going to play shows, and I was playing a bit harder. And for the first 6 months, people were kind of like, I thought you were going to play a tech house set, which is not really what I do,
Yeah. So
it took a bit of time to get to kind of adapt from that, but now I'm in a good place. But like that's in a small way, it's nothing compared to like the Chemical Brothers and stuff. But it's a funny one, man. You just have to like really be careful, like what way you put yourself across the first couple of years, and just really work it that way, I think.
No, I totally agree. I think also fan bases, especially in Europe, it's quite a cliquey fan base.
Yeah.
Or it's not necessarily fan base, it's scenes are quite cliquey. Whereas I find in America, the kind of fan bases are a little bit more open, where you're going to get fan base that goes, they might go and see you play at a festival, but then they're also going to go and see Tiesto, and they're also going to go see some dubstep act, if you know what I mean. Whereas in the UK, it's like a little bit more, okay, I'm just a tech house fan, and I'm just going to go see the tech house. I'm going to stay at the tech house tent all day long. Which
I think it's more because they're there just to be there, sort of thing. I mean, I've seen that so many times, man. And it's like, fuck, you go to play these festivals, and some of them are amazing, and then some of them are just like they're all standing around, like they're just looking at each other, and they're taking the Snapchat photos and stuff, and you're just like, I could literally play anything and there's not going to make a reaction. It doesn't matter what I play, you know, and they just want to be seen to be there, which is, you know, it is what it is. But
Yeah, what's your thoughts on that? Because I guess like I was talking about this with Harvey Mackay on the last podcast, I think, or at some point somewhere. Because like house is a lot more fashionable now, or house techno, it's like kind of, especially in the UK, we get number ones that are house records and have done for years and years and years. Like house is a huge part in the British culture. But what's your thoughts on like festivals and clubs? Because for me, like when I go to a club, I don't expect anyone to know who I am. For me, it's just like, how the fuck am I going to win these people over? I find it is like more of a kind of a challenge, but especially at these festivals, a lot of people aren't even there to see anyone. What's your thoughts on all of that?
I think the famous one was it's a photo from years ago where this I think you know what I'm about to say. This girl taking a photo with MK saying Jamie fucking Jones.
Yeah,
you know that sort of like was that sort of sums up the whole situation, really. You know, but you know it is what it is, man. I mean, these people, they're obviously coming to the gigs because they like it in some shape or form. They might not be as diehard fans as me and you are listening to Chemical Brothers from the 90s, but you know they love the music in some way. They might not love it in as deep a level as we do.
Yeah,
but you know, it is. I think the reason we get to play so many gigs is because, you know, it's grown so much, and this might be like unpopular topic or unpopular opinion, but I think the EDM era sort of helped us get to that stage
massively. Yeah,
I think the EDM guys like David Guetta and Tiesto or whatever, they got in Swedish House Mafia, they got to such a level where whenever that bust, the fans still want to listen to different music, and they've trickled down to like the tree a little bit, and they're getting into techno, they're getting into house music, they're getting into tech house, and it's the scene as a whole has grown, and that's a fact. I mean, if you look at the statistics from the IMS report every year, like the music fans are going up and up every year. So I mean, I think that's cool, and you're going to get a bit of people that are kind of going to the festival for the first time, or their mates dragging them along and stuff. But you know, it's as long as it's not too overwhelming and it's not like a complete sort of like posers fest, then I can get behind it. You know, you're always going to get a percentage of them, but you know, you need a couple of guys that are like actually really into it to keep the party going. You know.
Yeah, definitely. I've only played one festival where I'm like, I'm not doing that again. Like, it's just I've only had it once, but it's just so depressing when you're just playing and you might as well just be playing an iPod. And to be fair, it could have been me. It could have been the mood that I'm in, like at that time, because it's like it could 100% have just been me, and just, you know, like how it is sometimes you get off the decks and you're like, oh yeah, that was shit. So it could have been my fault, but yeah, man.
You feel like crap after. But you know the weird thing about that though is like whenever you do gigs like that, and then you check like your Facebook, your Instagram afterwards, everybody's like, "This is the best gig I've ever been to. You played amazing." You're like, "Really? I thought everybody hated it." You know, and then you check your phone and like everybody's like going up about how great it was. And I was like, "All right, fucking, I managed to wing that one again."
Yeah, totally. So what's been your like part since being Rebuke and since like the record slammed, and then obviously you had Rattle. Was Rattle the follow up from Along Came Polly?
So the Pipe was the follow up.
Oh, the Pipe, yeah.
And then it was because it was funny because obviously the Pipe came out on Dirtybird, which did really well as well, and it came out in quite a quick succession because I wrote the Pipe whilst Along Came Polly was still in the middle of getting released because of what I said earlier about the long like release date between September and December. So I'd already got the Pipe more or less ready to go by that stage. So the Pipe came out in January, and it was funny because I did my first tour in America. Well, I played Miami with you in March, but then the first full tour was like in June.
Yeah.
And it was weird because whenever I went to America, the Pipe was kicking off, and then when I played back in Europe, Along Came Polly was kicking off. So it was cool to see the tracks sort of like they're like two different tracks in two different territories that were all doing really well, which is fucking amazing for me, you know. And then later in the year, I ended up kind of I ended up putting out the Rattle EP on Adam Bear's Drumcode label, and that sort of that came about from me putting a release on his True Soul sub label, which is a bit more kind of groovier. And then he's seen that I was playing a lot more techno stuff in my sets, and I was sending him some bits and bobs, and he was like, hey, do you want to try something for Drumcode? And I just happened to have been finishing Rattle that same week, so I said it to him, and he played it all summer long, kind of like almost like a carbon copy story of what happened with Lonky and Polly in a way, where he played it all summer, and then it came out in like October, November that year, and it did really well as well. So it's happened a couple of times, and since then I feel like I've got the freedom to put out a record like say Dial Tone, when I put it in Dirtybird like last month, and now in a couple weeks time I put out my next Drumcode EP, which is slam and techno, and I love the fact that I can do that and still manage to like not alienate people, you know.
Yeah, totally. I think your sound kind of just fits across both boards though.
Yeah, I mean it's cool. I mean you have to define it quite a bit. I mean it goes back to like me making sure, like as I said, about picking the right labels and doing the right remixes, and like for instance, whenever Lonky and Polly came out first, I got so many, you know, major label A&Rs looking to stick a vocal over it and put it in the top 40, and it's just not for me, man. Like it goes back to what I was saying about defining your project. Do you want to be like a UK top 10 guy where you're playing, you know, these festivals for kids, you know, singing one song of yours? And that's not really what I wanted to do, man. I wanted to be a club DJ. I wanted to be an underground artist.
Yeah.
So, you know, it goes back to that again, and that's sort of the same ethos still today, man. It's just what I do. So, you know, see how it grows, really.
It's tough, isn't it? Because I think in being in the industry, you see both sides of it, right? You see people that have like top 10s in the charts and being extremely successful, and especially in times like this where there's no shows at all and people are making serious money on streams and things like that. And then obviously being an underground club DJ, you rely purely on the shows mostly. Like, what's your thoughts on that, like with regards to the streaming and the finances and things like that when it comes to situations like this?
I don't know, man. I mean, like I try not to moan about it too much because let's be honest, we get paid a lot of money to do what we do.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's people in such worse positions than I am, or also the DJs touring. I mean, I feel really bad for the guys that have like had their first breakthrough record in the past few months. And you know, that
massively,
must suck so bad, man, because like you've got this massive tune, you can't even play it to anybody. And it's like the one great thing, well, the good thing for me and I when Lonky and Polly came out is I could have like 18 months of touring after that, and I could like build up the fan bases. So whenever things go back to normal at some stage in the future, I'll still hopefully have some of that fan base still looking to come to my shows.
Totally,
but for guys that are having their first breakthrough track now, it's so important that they get out and they tour and they build up those fan bases in different areas, but they just can't do that, and they're kind of restricted to like doing live streams and stuff, which I don't know how effective that is. You know, I don't know is live stream is going to cut through the noise, but I just feel so bad for them. Maybe in a year's time or 6 months time, whenever we start doing gigs again, they'll still be as popular as they were, but I just feel really bad for those guys because I think they're in a really hard position where obviously they're lucky to get their big record, but also, you know, they need to I think to go from an artist that has a big track to like a touring DJ, you need to sort of do the turn for a long time and, you know, build up the fan base in different areas, and they've not had the chance to do that.
No, man, you know? I totally agree. There's been like a few big records that have come out over the like lockdown period, and you're just like, oh, I really hope they just kind of keep going for you, or like what you're saying, they get revived in when the clubs kind of start opening, which I think they will, because with how streaming works, records just keep doing well if it's a good record, if that makes sense, and they just it's just how it is. So fingers crossed they do. But I for me, I feel more sorry for like the people that work in the clubs and the people that work in the industry. That you're right, we're lucky that we get paid pretty good money. I think also I feel sorry for the people that have just gotten into like full-time music, when you kind of like take that jump to be like, okay, I can just about pay my rent to like with my shows, and then it all just gets taken away. I've known quite a few people that have had that, and you're just like, oh, it's not good. It's not fun.
And there's not much advice you can really offer them, man. I mean, like it's just you know, it is what it is. You just have to kind of roll with the punches, don't you? And it's the only thing is every one of us is on the same boat.
Yeah.
None of us are performing. Well, very few of us. But you know, and the people that are performing, they're not, you know, they're getting a lot of backlash for doing it. So I'm kind of happy not to be performing. But it's just, I don't know, man. It's weird. It's just a weird time. But hopefully, hopefully over the next 6 months we start seeing some sort of form of music coming back in, or gigs at least.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, this is just something that no one could have ever predicted. So you can't really moan about it because it is what it is. Everyone's in the same boat. I think it's going to be interesting when things do come back because at this moment in time, everyone's on like a level playing field. And I think whoever comes out of this strong with music, because at the end of the day, music is what kind of moves this industry. Great records really do move this industry. So whoever comes out with the best records is kind of going to be on top winning, and it's going to be exciting because at this moment in time, like whether you're Adam Bay or whether you're starting out, no one's really playing any shows. So yeah, it's interesting times, man. Interesting times. Yeah. How's things in Ireland?
Yeah, it's not too bad. We had like a jump in cases last week. I think it was last Friday, but it was pinpointed to like an outbreak in a food chilling plant, basically.
Yeah.
So we had like 175 cases, which doesn't seem a lot, but for Ireland, that's the most cases we've had since May. But it's kind of gone back down again a little bit. But the one thing I have to say about the Irish government is that, you know, as soon as anything changes, we're the first. Well, we're on it straight away. We're not waiting for a week to make a change. That day we'll make changes and that'll be that done. You know, it's good the way that we've handled it in a way. We've not handled it the best, like New Zealand might have handled it, but you know, think about those countries like New Zealand, they're 1,000, you know, 1,000 kilometers away from their nearest, or maybe 10,000 kilometers from their nearest neighbor. So it's a lot different to like Ireland, where we've got the borders with, you know, Northern Ireland and UK and stuff. So it's always going to be a bit different, but it's good, man. We try and keep the head up. There's no gigs at all. There's no sign of anything like that. The pubs have opened up again, but they have to be closed by 11. And you know, shops and restaurants are gradually getting, you know, back in full swing. So it's going good. Just hope that there's no like mad, you know, what do they call it? A resurgence
and it'll It's mad, man. It's mad. So what have you been working on? How's all the releases going for the rest of the year?
Good, man. The more that's done.
It's nice feeling.
Almost completely done. The next one is I did this remix. I think I sent you it. It was a remix of Human Resource Dominator.
Yeah.
That comes out next Friday on Armada, which is really exciting. And then 2 weeks after that, the Drumcode EP comes out.
Nice.
So that should be pretty cool. And then following that, I've got a collaboration with Alan Fitzpatrick on We Are the Brave.
Cool.
In October, and then
end of the year, mate. End of the year.
Yes, man. I think I've got something in December. I think we just need to tie it all in. But apart from that, the year's done. I'm always big into like not putting out too much either, and I've always done that. I think quality over quantity.
Totally.
Rather than putting out something every 2 weeks and then, you know, hoping that something clicks at some stage. I'd rather put out 6 strong releases a year, 5 strong releases a year, and call it a day and hope that they do good, you know.
Yeah, totally. And I think also by doing like 4 or 5 originals, you can kind of tie in some remixes as well that kind of comes in as the year goes on, which is, what's your thoughts on remix? I always really like kind of just getting the odd remix offering and just having it be like kind of in a genre that doesn't kind of work with what we do, and then being able to put my spin on it. Have you kind of had the opportunities to do anything like that?
I've been offered a lot of remixes, and like I think what you said is great, because there's so many instances in the past where some producers have made a full career out of remixes, and like, you know, The Magician did that remix of Lucky Lee, wasn't it?
MK.
Yeah, and exactly, MK, and you know, a couple of different artists like that. So you can potentially cross different genres. But for me, when I do remixes, unless it sort of fits unless it fits the direction I'm trying to go in, I probably wouldn't take it on. I mean, I'd be very unlikely to like remix another techno record.
Yeah.
Because
it's pointless.
Me doing a techno remix of a techno track, sort of like what's the point? What am I going to do? Change a couple of patterns and like bounce back out again? You know, it has to be different. So I love taking on projects like this Human Resource one, where it's a track that I've loved from back in the day, and it fits the sort of Rebuke ethos a little bit. And you know, it seems that whenever I played it out there during the year, got a good connection. So that's sort of what I do. And whenever I do remixes, I always speak to the company or the label or whatever, and I'm like, I'm going to treat this remix as a original record, basically.
Yeah.
So I'm going to promote it as much as I would promote original, because I see some artists, they'll do like 20 remixes a year. They'll not even put up a post on it on Facebook. They'll just let it do its thing, and it might take off, it might not take off. And to be honest, they treat it more as a cash cow than anything.
I think that is the case, isn't it? It's more so somebody's offered you like a shitload of money to do a remix, and you're kind of just, it is what it is, and you're just doing it. But I also get in these times as well that some people are having to do that as well. So in life as well, people want to earn money, and at the end of the day, I don't have an issue with that. But it's just, you're right. It's just about doing what fits you, if that makes sense. I will never forget, like, it was ZDS, Zombie Disco Squad. He was the person that said that to me like years ago. He was like, just don't be in a point where you have to take something for money, because you'll regret doing it in like 5 years time, and it will probably do pretty well, but you'll probably regret doing it.
Absolutely.
Which is an interesting thing.
Once you kind of once you sort of like put money in front of art, does that make sense? Then you're kind of in a downward spiral. I think you sort of need to place yourself, like, going back to the new artist that say had a big track. Once he starts touring, he should save up all the money he has in case something like this happens again.
Yeah.
Have a little like bank account sitting with your money. So if you have like another 3 months off, you're not having to remix Spice Girls to pay your rent a month, you know. And I think that's sort of what I did a little bit too. And it's all about putting yourself in a position where you're kind of a little bit, you're not reliant on getting money month to month, and you're not reliant on these remixes to pay your bills, because it's such a, I completely understand why people do it, and it's probably pretty annoying for them, because they know deep down they probably don't want to remix the track, but they know it's a good payday for them.
Yeah.
But you need to kind of think, like, reflect on 5 years from now and be like, you know what, did I really want to remix that track? Did it really fit what I was trying to do? Did it fit the direction? And if it did, then great, you know, whatever. But if it didn't, then you should probably be more like, you know, I wouldn't say exclusive to what you do, but just be more kind of, you know, focused on what you want to do, rather than like taking these things, but it's easy money, and, you know, and then you kind of regret it. It's the same with taking on gigs, man. I mean, like, whenever I started, you know, getting offered gigs, a lot of the parties that I got offered to play just weren't sort of in the vein of where I was wanting to go. And that goes back to what I was saying about kind of being, you know, sort of branded as like a tech house DJ at the start whenever I was playing techno gigs. And I had to knock back so many like really, really cool gigs that people would probably be like, what the fuck, why did you do that?
Yeah.
And it was just down to the fact that I didn't want to be labeled as like a house or a tech house artist. I want to be, I want to be labeled as a techno artist that can also play tech house and house music and do a bit of everything.
Yeah.
And I had to knock back so much stuff, and sometimes sit at home for the weekend, not playing a gig at all whenever I could have done that.
Yeah.
Which my agent at the time didn't like, but you know, I think it sort of paid itself off. In a way now where I'm kind of in a position where I can sort of do whatever I want to do, and if I was on a certain lineup with like a Drumcode guys, I wouldn't be out of place compared to like some other people in the scene that might be a little bit out of place, you know.
I think the power of saying no is really powerful, and it's not even the fact that you're being difficult. It's just knowing clearly cut exactly where you want to be. And if this is I was literally had a conversation with a mate just before this podcast, and it's like, work out where you want to be, work out the end goal, and the end goal can always change. However, if you work out your end goal and then work back on how to get there, you've got to make sure that every kind of single step of the way you can be like, is this heading towards the end goal? It might be a side road, and it might be a squiggly rut. It's not going to be one straight line 100%. That's not how this career works. It's not how life works. But by getting it, but by getting it in your head and in your team's head and everyone around you, so everyone understands that this is why we're doing this and this is what we're doing is kind of great. For me, like I haven't done that like the whole time. And I kind of envy artists like yourself where you have this clean cut vision of the direction that you want to go. Like for me, I've been kind of down I've done so much under the Will Clarke name over the years, and it's literally in the last maybe 18 months that I've fully known exactly where I want to take things. But it's a process, if you know what I mean. And could I have changed my name? Yeah, I could have. And I could have started a whole new project and kind of done that. But for me, it was like kind of a challenge to myself to like see how I can kind of change the brand. And although I don't really like using the word brand because it's just me. But yeah, it's an interesting one because there's been a lot of artists that we all know, that we're all friends with, that have like had a massive switch up, if you know what I mean. And if you look at some artists that are huge now and what they were releasing like 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, some of it was absolute garbage. Like I've released some absolute garbage. But I think that's just the whole joys of doing what we do, right?
But like, I think the reason why I could get this sort of like vision now with Rebuke is because I did that for so long under my own name, and I knew how like fuck man. I remember like a real point in my. I think I ended up like remix. I'm not going to name what it was because I just don't want to upset anybody. But I ended up doing this remix coming to Endless Fruitation from like the Ruben Keeney project.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I really hate this track. I hate it. I hate the artist. I hate everything about it. But I'm doing it because it's like whatever, a couple of quid.
Yeah.
And that was back before I was getting any gigs, so I was reliant on that money. And around that time, I was like, you know what, man, I'm fucking sick of this. You know, I want to do something new and I want to do something fresh. And that was sort of like the beginnings, I guess, in some form of like putting the seed in my head about Rebuke. And but now because of all them past experiences, which I'm sure you've gone through as well, and in the days of all the years of making music, you've seen that too. And now we're in a place where we can do better with it and kind of go forward that way. And also I want to go back to what you're saying about the power of saying no. It's so important, man.
Yeah.
And for producers that have their first kind of breakthrough track, or not even have a big breakthrough track. It's not always about having a Beatport number one. Somebody that's gaining momentum, and the power of saying no is so good because chances are the person that you say no to is going to come back with the counter offer that's going to be better and more suited to you anyway. I mean, not a famous story, but a story for me that stands out in my own career in Rebuke the past couple of years was whenever I got booked to play at Tomorrowland's like a year ago. And whenever we got offered at first, I was like so buzzing because hey, it's fucking Tomorrowland, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, oh, nice, I get booked to play Tomorrowland. And then I found out the stage was like this stage that was kind of not really suited at all to what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
And it almost killed me, but I said no to it. And I was like, I'm such an idiot, man. I told my friends, I was like, I'm just turned out Tomorrowland. I'm so stupid, And then I was like, so depressed for days. And then all of a sudden, my agent called me up and they're like, oh, hey, they've counter offered with you to play the Eric Prince stage instead. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
So it's sometimes you need to do that. You need to have the balls to be able to like say no. And 9 times out of 10, if somebody really likes what you're doing and they want to have you play, they'll make room for you somewhere else, or they'll fit you on the label in some other shape or form. And the exact same thing happened with Drumcode back in the day. I mean, Rattle, initially Adam wanted to put it out on a compilation, but I really wanted to do an EP. And, I ended up knocking back the compilation.
Yeah.
And, I said to him, hey, man, I really love Drumcode, but, I don't want to put it on a compilation. I'd love to put out a single or an EP. And he was kind of, I'd say even then, because it was the first time we spoke, he was probably like, geez, this guy's got big balls, to be turning down this. But in the end, it was worth it because, I worked hard enough to get like three well-rounded tracks, and it became the EP of what it was. But if I didn't say no then, and, I probably would have maybe not have done what it did. So I think the power of saying no is so important. And don't be afraid to do it, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to come back with something else, or they're at least going to respect your decision. And the people that don't respect your decision are probably not nice people anyway.
I think they're probably the people that you don't want to be working with anyway. And I think it is so important. And like with my team, the amount of stuff that we've turned down in the last like year, just because like for me, I'm trying to like build my career in UK and Europe.
Yep.
And we've had a few offers and we're just like, it just doesn't fit. Whereas in America it might fit, but in the UK it just doesn't for me, if you know what I mean. And it is so powerful. It's so frustrating though when you're like when you're turning down offers or remix or anything, turning down anything. It kind of leaves that like, oh, what if? For me, I'm like, what if I met somebody there that like changed my life, or that like it's those kind of things. But you can't live your life by that. If it doesn't feel right in your stomach, then it's probably not right.
Yeah, your first reaction, I think, is the biggest one. I mean, you can't get too clinical, I guess, sometimes, because what you said is, I think, is 100% correct, is that sometimes you play a party that might not be 100% what you want, but it's not too far off, and you might meet somebody that could end up changing your life. And, you know, there's a bit of room for that too. But, I mean, if you're getting booked to play a hard trance festival and you're a house DJ, then you're probably not, you know, going to do anything that's going to add value to it.
I don't know, though. Let's be honest, that could be quite fun.
Yeah, well, who knows? I can knock out a hard house set sometime with it.
Well, I think it's like converting people. I never forget talking to Barclay, Claude Von Stroke. When he kind of got to the point where he was like headlining big festivals, he would be, and it was during the EDM time, and he would be like in between like Steve Aoki and like Swedish House Mafia, just using them for an example. And he's like, what the fuck do I play? He's like, I'm playing these massive shows, but I have to keep them entertained for an hour, and the people before me and the people after me are just playing like straight bangers, and he doesn't play straight bangers. So it's like, it's having to adapt as an artist. Is like, if you want to be that big, if you want to be a headliner at a festival, you're going to be up against all the other headliners. So it's about sometimes making yourself like be as good as you possibly can, and just make sure that you entertain. I remember playing, I can't remember what, it was like a hard fest or one of the Insomniac events, and on the other stage it was like Diplo, and I'm like, how the fuck am I gonna like compete with Diplo? But you just have to, and you just have to learn to like roll with it. And I think that's the fun part of this industry, is that we do get opportunities that, or some of us are lucky enough to get the opportunities that kind of puts us in a different crowd. And by putting ourselves into a different crowd, we have to step up and go, fuck it, let's just try it.
Yeah.
Just
totally
wing it.
Yeah. No, totally, man. It's funny with like the whole festivals and the buildings and stuff we got. You have to be really careful with it. And even when you do be careful, sometimes it can still go wrong. I mean, the festival I played where it's just didn't work, but you know, you have to like write them off and be like, yeah, tried it, we'll know better for next time.
Yeah, exactly.
But, it's but yeah, being in between like say like with Barclay, being in between Swedish House Mafia and whoever else it was, it must be pretty tough, because obviously you don't want to let down the fans that are there because they love what you do and they love your big records, but also those big records might not be big enough for like the 15-year-old Swedish House Mafia fans looking to sing along to "Don't You Worry, Child," you know. And kind of compromise in a way, but not so much where you're like going against the grain of what you've done. So that's such a hard thing to do, but you know,
I think that's the fun of it though, right? Is that you have you like, at the end of the day, you don't go and buy a Queen ticket for them to play Bob Marley records, although it'd be fucking dope. But you're being booked to play who you are. So you can't change, but you have to be able to have the confidence to go, okay, so there's 20,000 people in front of me. Let's say 2,000 people know who I am. How the hell am I going to make sure that by the end of this, 15,000 people are going to know who I am?
Yeah, that's a really good way to think about it, to be honest. I think you said earlier on, I thought it was really cool, where you kind of go into clubs and you expect nobody to know who you are and you're trying to win them all over. I think that's such a good attitude to have, because so many DJs these days, they go in, they play their own music, or they play stuff that they like, and if the crowd doesn't like it, then they can go fuck themselves. But you know, it shouldn't be like that. You know, you're playing to the crowd. You know, they're there to dance, and you have to make them dance. You know, if they want to hear such and sound, then you have to play that sound. If they're not connecting with a certain vibe you're on, you need to switch that vibe up. And I think that's a really good way for any DJ. It doesn't matter if they're a club DJ or a party DJ. That's the way you should go into every gig, thinking, I need to, entertain this crowd, rather than being all about, this is the me show. Listen to what I'm playing. I don't care about it. You guys just, So
I don't really go to festivals unless I'm playing. But last year I went to Junction 2, and without saying any names, I went to see an artists, like a group of artists that I was like, I'm really excited. I really like their music. And within the first 15, 20 minutes, I was with some mates and that actually work in the industry, and they had artists that were playing at the festival. And I was like, they opened with it was the most boring opening ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have some of the biggest records ever in the industry, ever. And you open with that. I'm just like, this just not like, I get it. You're at a cool festival, but half of these people don't give a fuck about being cool. Half of these people want to hear you play your biggest records and make sure that everyone fucking parties and has the best time. And I want to leave the club knowing that I've done a good job, or the festival. And this is kind of where my competitive side, I want to leave the festival and everyone talk about my set. I don't want anyone to talk about Rebuke set. I don't want anyone to talk about Clarke on Stroke set. I want everyone to talk about Will Clarke set. And that's just the competitive side of it. But also by doing that, you're entertaining everyone else. And that's what pays us.
And I think that's why you've built such a fledgling fan base, man. And that's why people love what you do, is because you've got that mentality. And honestly, I try to do the exact same thing. I mean, you need to put the ego aside. You've had a couple of big tracks, people might know them, but you're still playing to a crowd that you need to more or less put in your head that nobody's heard of you. I mean, if you're playing a headline show where you've sold out 1,000 tickets and they're all there to see you play, then maybe a little bit different. You might be able to kind of get away with like knowing, all right, well, these people are my fans already. But for festivals and stuff like that, you need to go in thinking, none of these guys know who I am. I need to impress them, and I need to, even if they do know who I am, the chances are that they're not a massive fan, but you need them going away, fucking shouting your name from the rooftops and talking about it for the next 6 months, and that's, I think that's the guys that rise to the top, or the guys that never forget that and don't kind of fall into the trap of playing big festival after another and being like, ugh, who cares? There's another one next weekend,
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, there is like, how many times have you got to a show or you're at a hotel before a show and you're like, oh my fucking God, I cannot be bothered to play this. Like, everyone has that. And you the alarm wakes you up and you're like, oh my God, I have to get on a plane. Like, I've had 2 hours sleep, or I've not had any sleep, and I've got to play tonight, and I know I'm not going to sleep on the plane, blah, blah, blah. However, when you get there, it's like,
that's a buzz.
It's fucking work, man. It's like, this is work. This is our work, and people have paid, people have worked all week to earn money to see you play. Yeah. And if they're not going to forget if you play a shit set. They're never going to forget if you play a shit set.
Yeah.
And
no, totally not.
Just got to fucking do it.
Yeah. And I think as well is like whenever you kind of get to the club, well, for me, whenever I'm maybe so tired, I'm like, I don't even want to play this gig, and I'm so tired, I haven't slept in 2 days. But then when you get to the club and you see people's faces and you see how excited they are and how they're dancing, you're like, you get like a second wind, don't you? You're like, fucking, let's go, and you can go on all night then. But
man, I miss it. I miss it, dude. Yeah, I haven't missed it. I haven't missed playing since lockdown, really, up until the last like couple of weeks, because I've actually really enjoyed having time off. But I'm like starting to miss like going to sweaty clubs and like just playing in front of people. It's like, what's been the like part of your career, like after Along Came Polly and the Pipe and Rattle? Like, what's been the part in your career where you're like, fuck, I've achieved something? Like, what was it? Was there a specific thing, or was it like getting the Beatport #1, or was it the like playing a show, or what part was it in your career?
There's been like a couple of milestones for me when I started that I wanted to do. I mean, the Beatport #1 thing was one of them. Essential New Tune was another one, which I was buzzing about, just because everybody wants an essential new tune, don't they?
It's amazing, that feeling, isn't it?
Yes, it's just wicked, man. And then
I don't think,
know how, like,
I don't think, sorry to butt in, but I don't think like people outside of the music industry realize how much Essential Big Tune is like,
exactly what I was gonna say,
is part of, is like how it feels to have that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's
well,
something.
It's a good, like, I guess it's, if anything, it's a good tastemaker sort of thing, because if you get your essential new tune, then you're kind of, for the right people, as you're saying, like Spotify and stuff, you're firmly on their radar if you get a sense of new tune, and it usually leads to more success. But so stuff like that was really good, and then just the touring. I mean, the first tour in America, I played in June last year. Went okay. I mean, it wasn't the best. Like, it was a kind of, it was a weird one, because it was all my own shows, and I was like playing a headline show in, say, like Seattle on a Wednesday night, and then like Denver on a Tuesday, and it was my first time playing that run of shows, and they did okay. Like, they weren't horrendous by no means, but they weren't like jam packed like I was used to back in Europe. But then when I played there again in September, the gigs were so much better already. Well, not better, but they were just a lot more busier, and you could tell people were starting to get to know me a lot more, and that was a real kind of cool moment for me, because I'm like, all right, well, things are starting to build, and I'm going in the right direction.
Totally.
And that for me is like more important than like getting a Beatport #1 and stuff like that. Because these days, to be honest, man, I could give a fuck if I get a Beatport #1. I don't really care. I mean, it's just more kind of, I want to, like, over the past few months, and especially since lockdown, I've realized the importance of keeping your fans you already have important, or in the main mindset, rather than trying to push, I want to get another 50,000 fans by the end of the year. You should really just focus on the people that you have already, and keep them happy, because they're the ones that are going to push your music to the friends anyway. And so what I've been doing recently is more kind of like setting up like little fun Facebook groups. We've got the Rebuke Ravers Club that we set up the other week. And that's been doing really well. That's been just hopping all the time on Facebook. And, I try and, be pretty active on social media all the time, on Instagram and Twitter, and, interact with the fans and kind of get to know them on a kind of deeper level. And that to me is way more rewarding than anything else. So I've been doing a lot of that. But going back to your question about different like accolades, I mean, honestly, man, there's not a lot left on the list to do. I mean, I'd love to just play different areas. I'd love to like play India. I'd love to, do a couple of headline festivals in America and stuff. But there's not a whole lot left that I'm like, this is what I want to do. And this is where I need to get. I mean, the next real step, and this is something that I've been speaking to my team about for the past few months, is to build this little like world or little community where they can like, fans can talk to each other, and they can build their own little parties, and eventually build that into like a fledgling sort of, world of its own. That's the next big thing for me, really, because the rest is kind of all done. And I think if we all just kind of kept aiming to get another Beatport #1, we could be like, it's like throwing a dart, throwing a dart with a blindfold on. You don't know what's going to happen. But I think building a fan base is a lot more, I wouldn't say easier, but it's a lot more focused, and you can achieve it a lot more, Well,
I think realistically, like, a Beatport #1 is an ego thing, and building a fan base is more so giving it back. This sounds cheesy as fuck, but it's giving it back to the people.
Totally, man. Totally.
And I think for me, that's the one thing that's helped me the most, is like my social media is just like constantly responding to people, being just like respecting the people that come to my shows and listen to my music. There's a lot of big DJs out there that don't do that. And I think, especially during lockdown and coronavirus, I think they've realized that they kind of have to keep their fan base because they're going to fuck off at the end of the day. Yeah. People grow up as well. People grow up. I think for me, a lot of it is about having my music introduced to the younger generations as well. Yeah. I've seen it with Dirtybird. I got on Dirtybird. My first release was 2015. And I've seen like a lot of people from 2015 that I'm now really close friends with over the last 5-6 years don't go to parties anymore, or they want to go to different parties, and they don't want to go to a Dirtybird party, but they want to go to this party. And it's about, how do we capture those fans, and how do we keep those fans in to be fans of our music, but also how do we get the new fans that might not have even heard of me, if you know what I mean. And by growing that, I think it's really key. I think it's really key.
Yeah, because I think like that first, like that was one of the things I really admired about you when I, even before the Rebuke project, was whenever you started probably like around 2015, 2016 when you had your first couple of breakthrough tracks. I noticed that you'd be replying to everybody. You'd be replying. You go to so much effort to reply to all your fans on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and that's actually something that I took away from you, by the way, because I was like, this is fucking so dope, man. This guy's actually going and he's replying to everybody, and these people, they appreciate it, man. The fans appreciate it. They like getting a reply back, just like you would love to get a reply back if your favorite band or whatever
Exactly.
from back in the day replied to you, and that could be the difference between them keeping up with your music or not. And it all takes is for us to spend 2 seconds to acknowledge them and just say, hey, thanks, whatever. And you don't have to go and write an essay to them, but just something. And then I think as well, like I do a weekly mix show and just playing new music, and obviously you do the radio show and stuff and your mixes as well. And I think fans appreciate that because they know there's no money in that. We do that just to get back to them and something to keep them going. And I think that's the sort of like staples of building like a really healthy fan base that is going to still be there in 5 or 10 years time. I mean, you still need to put out music and make music that people like, but that's sort of we have that down to the T right now with music.
I think it's about what works for you as the artist as well. I think for me, I've seen a lot of things in lockdown, and a lot of people try new things because it's more so based on finances and how can I build a fan base and earn money out of them, rather than how can I build a fan base that are going to be with me for the rest of my life.
Yep.
Because for me is like, which is the reason why I haven't done any like live streams, and I haven't done any like Twitch stuff or gaming stuff or try to become like a YouTuber or something like that, is because it just doesn't feel right to me. But what I do give to the fans is what works for me and also works for them. I think it's just about also going back to that thing about having your like who you look up to kind of respond back to you, or who you like to go to see in the club and things like that. I think it's really important because, as I'm sure you had it at the beginning of your career, when you like direct message like some bigger DJs that you look up to and they don't respond, and then when you get a first bit of success, they're the first people to want to collab with you, or they're the first people, and you're just like, it's so sad because it's like this is just
you lose a lot of respect for them because
massive amounts. And for me, it's like for me the industry is just about building relationships and friendships up, and then whatever comes out of that. Like, let's say for instance, like if we ever did a collab, it's none of us pushing it. We're just like, yeah, we should write some music someday. But that's not the be and end all of our relationship, if you know what I mean. It's just like, it's just part of it that might happen one day, might not happen. And if it doesn't, none of us are going to fucking lose any sleep over it.
Yeah,
but
totally.
It's the relationships that come wanting something. And I think that's really unhealthy. And I think this happens in life, right? Like everybody sees, not everybody, but a lot of people see somebody be successful and then want a piece of it. And you can see it from miles away. It's just kind of cringe. It's so cringe. So if that's you out there listening, don't be that person.
Oh, but I've seen some horror cases the past year or two.
I bet you have, because you went from, like, no disrespect, you went from not releasing music to one of the biggest artists or most in demand artists in the world.
Yeah,
you must have seen some.
Yeah, a lot, man. I mean, it's sort of disappointing a little bit because at one stage you thought these guys were the bee's knees. You thought these guys are class. Hopefully I'll be like them one day. And then, I'm not saying that I'm like them now. They've had, massive careers and stuff. But as soon as you get to any level of success, they're the first ones trying to ride off the back of it. And I'm sure they've been sending another 10 other emails to other hot guys that week as well.
Yeah.
That are doing well in the scene. They're hot guys or girls or whatever. And it's just, it's disappointing, man. But, you kind of get where they're coming from. They've been in the scene for a while, and they sort of need people like us to keep them relevant in a way, which is kind of sad in itself. I don't think it's something that I could ever do. I think when I've had my day, man, I'm happy to pass the baton on to somebody else. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, if
yeah.
I get my couple of years out of this, and if I can build up a community where people love what I do, they like the kind of content that I've given them in terms of music, and they like the discography, and you know, somebody else wants to take that baton, and you know, I'm
Crack
happy to
on.
do that because you know we all have our careers, and I don't want to be that selfish guy when I'm in my 50s trying to push out young guys just to keep myself in there, you know, and I don't want to be like that, you know.
Yeah.
I want to be living in a lake house and not live by them.
But I think going back to that, I think you have a really strong point, because I think what happens is the industry, we can all change in the industry, right? So we all, and I'm sure you have to a certain extent, where you get show offers that you would never have thought you would get, offers of that much money, and it kind of changes your life. It's happened for the best of us, if you know what I mean. And then you get the older guys, and I think what happens is that I can't. This is all I can imagine that's happened. I could be talking utter bullshit, but they start to do things for the wrong. We spoke about this loads, I guess, but they start to do things for the wrong reasons, and then
Yep.
most of that is just because they're being offered so much fucking money that they can't say no to it. And it's not that they need it; it's just that greed of money. Like millionaires want to become billionaires, and billionaires want to become trillionaires. It's just how it is. And it's the same in this industry where, like, you get 5 million streams on a record. Next record, you want to get 10 million streams, and the next record after that, you want to get. It's just how life is. I think it's when people have a drive. But what I think changes in the music industry is that with success, whatever success is, we get given more luxuries in life. And I think eventually it goes away from just being that kid in your basement or your bedroom trying to write fucking great records. And it comes to a point where you're not even, the music is like the side of it. And people forget that the reason why we got here was by writing great records. And I think there's artists out there that have carried on writing great records throughout their whole career. And that's why they're so good. If you know what I mean. That is why they're fucking amazing. But then there's those artists that did write those huge records, but then just stopped writing records and were more interested in getting fucked up or flying private jets and things like that, and that's when the music goes and they fall off the bandwagon. And then they see somebody like yourself that's doing extremely successful, and they're like, oh, I remember what it was like back then, but I don't want to go and put the work in that I need to put in. I want to just go and ride off somebody else's.
Yeah.
It's kind of
No,
fucked.
it makes sense, man. I think you've summed up a lot of the guys in the industry that just have done it all before. And, you know, I guess the thing is, right, is that they've done it so many times before that it's stopped being exciting to them.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
remember the first time you got your first record played on Radio 1 on Pete Tong show, you're buzzing.
Yeah.
And then by the 100th time, you're like, oh, nice one.
Yeah.
Pete played my track again. Although it's just still, we love it, but it's not the same as the very first time. Just like your first Beatport top 10 or,
Totally.
you know, your first 10 headline in the gig. And for them, because they've been at it so long, it's really hard for them to like keep enjoying the same stuff. And that's why I admire like guys like Adam Bear and Clarke and guys that have been at it for so long and they still enjoy doing it, and they don't do it for, you know, like Clarke, I'm sure, is a multimillionaire. He doesn't need to do it anymore, but he still does it. You know, and he's such a cool guy. He's a lovable guy.
Yeah.
You know, he seems like the kind of guy you'd be able to approach at a festival and he'll sit chatting to you for 20 minutes. You know, and that's the kind of people I think I love, and that's the guys that last so long. But they have to be there for the reasons of just loving music. It can't be in other ways. And I'm sure a lot of them, you know, they still fly private and stuff, but you know, it's not really, that's not the focus. That's not the reason they get up, and they don't get up to get on a private jet to go to a gig. They get up to go to the gig, and then the rest is just all part and parcel of, you know, how they live.
Yeah, totally.
But, you know, I think there's a bit of that, and there's two different sides of it. And, you know, like I've seen some DJs, you know, they live way beyond their means, and they put up photos of them flying private every second weekend, and you know, they just can't sustain it, you know, and they're doing it for the gram, as they say, the Instagram, and you know, and it's just not, it doesn't last long, man. That stuff has a very limited lifespan. And also, I think I always get a bit cringe about these private jet photos and stuff because it doesn't really relate to the people that you're putting it up to, is it? You know, it's like,
Dude, I'm so
you're
glad you
trying to get
said
people
that.
out there.
I fucking hate it. Like
I know, it's like,
last summer was the summer that I started unfollowing DJs for that one reason. And
I know, man.
I unfollowed some friends that I
Yeah,
respect highly, but I don't
yeah.
give a
It's like,
it's
come on, dude. I mean, we get treated so well as it is, but you need to like, you need to relate to people, and I think that's what I try and do as well. That's why I try to like, keep in touch with the fans, do what they do. I'm not going to put up photos of me flying business class. I'm not going to like put up photos of me in a 5-star hotel and like say, look at me, look what I'm doing
yeah.
this weekend, and because I don't think people actually really like it. I think people are kind of like, oh, look at this guy fucking flashing his knob for no reason.
I think it's also like, who actually gives a fuck? Like
Like,
who
apart
like
from them.
yeah, like with DJs. I was having this conversation with a friend last night. It's like there's two ways to look at things. It's like obviously everything that's kind of going on politically and what we do as a living. It's like at the end of the day, people listen to our music, people play to go and see us in a club. They don't nothing else. They don't need to see how much money we earn, and they don't need to see our flashy clothes. They don't need to see what watch you just bought. They don't need to see what private jet you're flying with. At the end of the day, the industry, our industry is about a fucking sweaty club. And
Yep.
I'm cool with club photos and the odd like festival photo and the odd like sweaty club video. It's cool. Like I get it. We've all flexed in that situation when we've seen, like I posted a video yesterday of me playing at a festival and it was bonkers. But for me, that's like, it's all of my fans that are going bonkers. It's not like I'm trying to play a big dick competition about my private jet. But it's like, it just doesn't make sense to me. However, it must work. I don't know. Does it work? Do people like it? But at the end of the day, we're just it's fucking house DJs.
Yeah, dude. I think it's really hard. I think anyway, it'd be really hard to connect if you're like flying private jets all the time and then going to like some sweaty nightclub in Leeds. You know, how can you go from that to like flying business or flying on a private jet to all of a sudden playing to like 18-year-olds in a sweaty warehouse in Leeds that have saved all to go to see play? You're just not on the same level anymore. And once you're not on the same level as the people you play to, that's when things go downhill, I think, because you start kind of, I don't think they think that they're better than the people they're playing to, but they're just not on the same vibe anymore.
Yeah.
You're not like, you start playing this weird shit that you think is good because you think your shit smells good, and then before you know it, you're playing this music that nobody relates to anymore, and that's when you start like the downhill spiral.
Going down, yeah.
And then by the time you realize that, you're backpedaling like fuck to try and like come back to where you're at, but it's too late by then, and that's, I think a lot of people's fallen for that before.
Yeah, I agree. It's quite funny to watch though.
Yeah.
I also go on.
I reckon if Carl Cox put up a photo of him sitting on an EasyJet flight to Ibiza, that would get way more likes than him sitting on a private jet flight to Ibiza. I guarantee it, man, because I'd be like, look at this guy fucking flying an EasyJet flight to Ibiza. I'm like with all the fucking ravers around him. That'd be so cool, man. That's down there, and it's and it's happened in popular music too, man. I mean, like if you look at Ed Sheeran and Lewis Capaldi and stuff like that, they're all really big, not because they look good, like they look like normal blokes, but they're just so personable.
Yeah.
And they seem like obviously they have amazing music as well, but the reason they're so popular is and like social media side is that they're not putting up private jet photos, they're putting up just them, going to a supermarket or just messing around or having a bit of crack, and that's why I think they're so personable and why people like them, and that's sort of what things are shifting to. I think even the pop game, it's becoming less about being, over the top and wearing gold jewelry and stuff, and more about being relatable, and the dynamics sort of shifting a little bit now in music as a whole, which is, to be honest, very welcomed.
I think it's healthier for people's mental health as well.
Yeah.
I think also I feel sorry for kind of people that kind of start off in the industry and have a lot of success very quickly. I feel like sometimes they feel like that they have to live up to that life. Especially when you're younger. in anything really, when somebody's young and successful, it's kind of like game over. You need your 20s to kind of fuck off and make mistakes and go through those years. And even like I'm 30 now. How are you? 29, 28?
28, yeah.
Yeah, like even
we're pushing on, man.
Yeah, cracking on, mate. It was literally like 15, no, like 12 years ago we were in Ibiza.
Yeah, man. Seems like a lifetime away.
A long time ago. Really long time ago.
And you grind, like you're a real grinder then as well. I mean, like you I remember when I spoke to you, you were saying like that summer you're in Ibiza, you'd like sometimes be having to play like 10 hours a day DJ sets.
Yeah.
And stuff, and you grinded, man. Like there's nobody more than yourself that grinded out and read your crowd and played long hours. And I think a lot of the guys these days, well, not a lot of them, some of them, they have a big record, but they never played clubs before, and they've not experienced like all the bullshit of like having to play to hen parties or playing to like your drunken uncle that doesn't like dance music, to grind you a little bit. Because we appreciate these gigs now because we're like, oh, nice when we actually get to play a gig where people actually like what we play. Because we're so used to like playing to these people that were giving us dirty looks every time we try to drop a track that we liked. And now we appreciate the fact that we can actually go into a club, even if there's only 20 people there or 2,000 people.
Yeah.
We still appreciate it because we're getting to do what we love and we're not getting judged by it. We're not getting asked to play Katy Perry or anything. And I think that's itself is worth doing.
I agree. I think it's kind of like a theme of this podcast that's kind of come up over the last like however many episodes I've done is like, and this is our fault to blame, I think, to a certain extent. And it goes back to being relatable on social media and just generally as people. But I don't think we show the grind. I don't think people necessarily see the grind of leading up to what is our whatever. I don't like the word success, but I don't know what to use instead. But it's like people don't realize like how long you've been doing it for. People don't realize how long Adam Bayer was doing it for, because at that snapshot of time, that's when they found him or found us, and that's how they only think we've been around for fucking 24 hours. But it's tough. I don't know how you can kind of get that across, because I think going back to that private jet thing, I think that takes the grind away from everything, because it's not real. I think what happens is you then get people in the industry doing the industry for the wrong reason and trying to become a DJ and trying to become a producer and trying to whatever in any industry for that reason, because they want to have loads of money and things like that. And we all know that it's fucking hard to get loads of money in this industry, and you've got to be fucking good and you got to work for years. Yeah,
even if you're turned full time and it appears like you're making a lot of money, a lot of the guys aren't. I mean, a lot of the industry is like, a lot of the money in the industry is pushed towards a very select few. Yeah. While the rest of us are kind of like, well, I'm not saying we're not getting well paid, but we're not getting like the €50,000 gigs every time we leave the house. That's made up, man. That doesn't happen, and that's not how we do things, or at least me anyway. But
no, I think you're right. I think you're right. Yes, you're right. When we start to get paid, we get paid reasonably well, if you know what I mean. But then again, I guess if you put back all the years that you didn't get paid for making music and all the years that you didn't you did free shows and had to like work a job on top of that, and it kind of levels itself out, if you know what I mean, to a certain extent. And then there's like, I always say there's like 3 levels in this industry. There's like the A games, the like AAA artists that are your headliners that kind of are generally always going to be there. You get somebody that comes up and floats around because they have a hit record. So I'm going to sneeze.
Yeah.
And then you have like you have like the like middle tier artists, which is where I would put myself. And then you have the kind of tier below us, which are like the new guys and girls that kind of, they have the most momentum at the end of the day. They could get to the medium tier very quickly if they play their cards right. But until you get to the where you're crossing the middle tier to the top tier, it's still, you're still not earning crazy money.
No.
You're earning great. You can be earning good money, but you're not like, you still have a mortgage, if you know what I mean. You're still paying your bills like everybody else, because people don't realize the expenses that happen when you're in the industry, like how much money you have to fork out before you get paid. It's interesting. It's really interesting because none of this you get taught about. No one tells you this at the beginning of your career. Even, I don't know, like even when you started Rebuke and kind of got successful, what were the things that, like, was there anything like that in the finances situation where you're like, fuck, I didn't know I had to pay this up front, or like, oh damn, I'm getting like $5,000 for this show or whatever, but then realize that you actually walk out with $1,000, which, don't get me wrong, £1,000 for a show is great. But when you get paid like $5,000 and you walk out with $1,000, it's like, oh shit, what happened with everything?
All of a sudden it's not as good as it was when you looked at the email the first time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's I try and keep the people on my team to be like people that are really invaluable, where I can go, if I told them that we're parting ways tomorrow, I would leave like a massive dent in my career.
Yeah.
So I try to like trim the fat as much as I can, so the people that are in my career, like we swapped things up a few months ago just to kind of keep it fresh. But the people that I work with, and essentially kind of work through me through percentages, whatever, they're all really, really good at what they do. But you see like an offer coming and you're like, well, 20% of this has to go there, and then 10% of that has to go there. And then if you're playing in America, you have to give the American government 30% for withholding tax. And then and then by the way, you have to book your own flights first, and then you'll get paid afterwards. And before you know it, you're like, oh, what the fuck? So when your brain explodes basically. So stuff like that is stuff I honestly never thought about doing. And then don't even talk to me about tax returns, man, because that's just a whole other ballgame. That's just like, it's like one of them things where the government, they know, like when you become a successful artist the first year, that's their day. That's their time to shaft you, because the second year they're not going to get you the same way because you've learned your lesson. But the first year, man, you better believe you're going to get hit bad.
You're getting bent over and served a new one, literally.
But I'll not make that mistake again. But yeah, it's all part and parcel of learning, man. I mean, it's good problems to have. I'd be lying if I didn't say that this is great, because could be a lot worse here, man. I could be sitting here in the same place as well as the past 10 years and making music that hopefully some DJ might play or whatever. So I'm still very, very, I appreciate it. I know I talk about it a lot, but it's more of a joking fashion, and I don't take it seriously at all, really, because it's, for me and for you as well, and money is secondary. We do this because we love to do it. So the rest of the stuff is really just business, but that's what they call the music business, man. And I mean, you have to kind of put your business head on sometimes as well. Totally. The party has to stop at some stage, and you need to look at things in like a business manner to make a career out of it. Like, I don't know have you ever heard of this DJ called Fergie?
Yeah, I remember Fergie. In Vegas now, isn't he?
Yeah. So he was sort of one of my very, very first mentors when I was 13. He's from Ireland as well, and I was talking to him the other day, and he showed me like this documentary thing or an interview thing he did, and the interview kind of goes back to his days whenever he was on Radio 1 playing Hard House every weekend. And he ended up at the end of Radio 1, he was so popular and he was doing so many gigs, but he still went bankrupt. I was kind of like, how could that happen? He's making so much money and he's on Radio 1 and he's playing 3 times a week, headlining festivals. And what he was doing was just not taking care of his finances. And his manager back then was effectively screwing him over. And he got a letter from the HMRC one day saying, hey, you owe so much money, and it just bankrupt him, and that stuff can still happen today. I'm not saying there's as many dodgy managers out there anymore, but if you're not actively looking after the incoming and outcoming, before you know it, you're like, shit, I should have looked at this 6 months ago. And it's all very boring, but the stuff that, if you want to plan 10 years ahead and you want to buy that nice house somewhere in London or whatever, you need to be thinking now rather than in 5 years time when you're like, shit, I should have done that back then. Because I've heard so many stories of different producers and DJs that had a great career and now they're left with nothing. And the reason they're left with nothing is because they spent those years doing nothing. They didn't really take care of what they were doing. They didn't look after themselves. They weren't really giving a shit because they thought this groovy dream would never end. And then it did, and they're back to square one, And it must be hard, man. Like it must be a really hard transition from going to being this like DJ touring worldwide to all of a sudden your career kind of dwindles and you have to go get a day job or something like that, and you're kind of on £10 an hour, and you're used to like, being flown all over the place, getting thousands of pounds a gig.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're going back to square one again. It must be pretty, it must be pretty hard, I think.
I think,
like, I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And there's something that I can't remember who said it to me. But they were like, don't be a house DJ that doesn't buy their own house. And it kind of like stuck with me. Because it's so true. There's so many people that just, it's that hood rich kind of lifestyle is that you think that it's never going to end. And realistically, can you afford that pair of trainers that's £1,000? Like, do you really need that pair of trainers, if you know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, like, I get it, if you know what I mean. Like, especially if you're around a lot of other successful people that are all spending a shitload of money, you kind of sometimes can feel like you have to. I get that, but I think it's about being true to yourself and working out, okay, do I really need this? Like, can this wait for a rainy day? And I think now is like a perfect time, right? Like, rainy days, we're in the rainy day. And I totally agree with what you're saying. It's, you have to look at the bigger picture and that this isn't going to last forever. And do we want it to last forever? That's the question. Yeah. Do you really, when you're 60 years old, do you really want to be having to play in front of your grandkids? Let's be honest.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like,
nobody wants to be that old dude, man. Nobody wants to be that old guy at a festival. I'd be like, who the fuck is this guy again? He was big like back in the 90s, and nobody knows who he is anymore. And you know, it's, although I respect those guys, but you know, they kind of seem a bit out of place to like 19-year-olds from Manchester that are listening to, you know, whatever.
And so, there's only like 5 or 6 people that can actually do it still. Yeah. You know what I mean? And and the likelihood of that happening for anyone is so unlikely. So I think it's just about being real with yourself, isn't it? And real with where you're at in your life and where you're at in your career. Like, we're lucky enough, like, you're younger than me, but we're still young at the end of the day. Like, we're 30 years old. We can, let's say we live till we're like 85. Like, we have a fucking long life ahead of us. We have a lot of opportunities to do a lot of things. And whatever those things are can be whatever. But right now, you have to look after now and hope that in the future, whatever you've done now is kind of going to progress into the future.
Definitely, man.
But
I agree.
We've just done an hour and a half. I think that's a good time to end.
We could go on all day, not around, man.
I know, right?
Quite bored silly.
I know. So before we finish, first of all, huge congrats, man. It's great to see your success. It's much well deserved. So big ups, man, and good. Keep it up. How can anyone follow you and listen to your music? What's the best way?
Basically everything's just under the handle Rebuke Music, so give me a shout there. As I was saying earlier in the conversation, I've set up like a Facebook group. It's a community-based thing called Rebuke's Rave Club, and there's I think over 1,000 members there already in a weekend. That's where I've spent a lot of my time hanging out these days. People are sending their music, I'm getting back to them, and they're just putting up photos of gigs and videos and stuff, and I'm replying all the time. And if you want to catch me anywhere, that's probably at the minute the best place to get me. But you know, just hit me up wherever, man. I'm always pretty active and stuff. But yeah, sweet.
Nice one, dude. Keep safe. And I'm sure I'll see you pretty soon, hopefully in a club, maybe next year.
Yeah, man.
Keeps in touch. Look after yourself, mate.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Big love. So that is a wrap. Big love to Rebuke for getting on the show. Hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. If you did enjoy it, send a review over. And also let me know in the DMs if you want me to get anybody else on the show. Would love to hear your thoughts. Have a great one. Keep safe, and I'll see you same time.